7 o'clock, and I will call a meeting of the Winona County Planning Commission to order. We'll start out with the flag pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, for those on the Planning Commission, does anyone have any objections to the amended agenda?
Move to approve.
Mark moved to approve.
Second.
Pat seconds it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. All right, did everyone get a chance to read over the minutes? Any corrections or additions, subtractions? I need a motion.
I move to accept.
Sheree moved to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Steve seconds it. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of the June 20th, 2019 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes are approved as read or written. Okay, at this time, we'll go to docket number PC 7-18-19-01.
Good evening. First request that we have tonight is to allow a conditional use permit to allow an automobile dealership within the community development in Shoreland District. Property is located in section 22 of Richmond Township, and it's along Highway 61 corridor, and it is accessed from a township road, Miller Valley Road, which essentially runs to the south of the valley. For those that are not familiar, this was the former Twin Bluffs Bar and Restaurant. In the application materials, the petitioner has indicated they would like the ability to offer for sale 30 automobiles. The facility or the building is currently empty, and in this type of business, they would like to use the existing building as an office area and for employees for their business. There's 2 septic systems on the property. There was a mound that was put in, and you'll see in the video that it was for a double wide that was on the property located more to the south for that use, and then there's also a system for the former bar and tavern. There has been inspections on those, and there will be some decisions that will have to be made by the applicants on how they're going to work through that. The petition did go in front of the Richmond Township Board, I believe last month, and they voted 2-1 to support the request. However, there was one dissenting township officer, and there was also petitions that were attached from the neighborhood in the surrounding area. And as the notes indicate, there was at least 59 signatures that had various concerns with the request.
How many members are on that board?
3, as far as the supervisors.
Okay, supervisors.
Here's an older picture. This was taken from the county assessor's records. That shows 2012. That shows the character and nature of the previous business. This is a video. We're in section 22 of Richmond Township, and this is in regards to the Easy Wheels Jason Jacobson proposed conditional use permit to allow a used car dealership. Currently, we're at the intersection of Highway 61 in Miller Valley Road. And this is 61 looking to the north. And we're at 25743 Miller Valley Road at the previous Twin Bluffs Bar and Grill that we see immediately in this location. And where the county vehicle is parked would be essentially the area, I believe, designated for parking for both customers and patrons and employees for the proposed business. Refer to the one color document that shows kind of the orientation of where the vehicles would be parked on here. This mapping exhibit. So the area designated right in this area would be for customer parking. And then there would be about approximately 30 vehicles that would be in the remainder of this area. Miller Valley Road is a Richmond Township road. And plat of Richmond. That shows the surrounding neighborhood in this area. I believe this trailer and storage is all in conjunction with the Highway 61 road project. It's, I believe, independent of the request at hand. Just a view of the parcel. In this area there could be, car lot. They, on their site plan, they have this labeled as potential expansion of main car lot parking of continued from that area. And just wanted to show that there is an existing mound system. Probably about 5 or so years ago, there was a manufactured home on the property that was being utilized by the operators of the restaurant and bar at the time. So there's a septic tank and a mound, and then there's also a septic system originally in that area further to the north that was utilized by the tavern itself. And as new owners complete the point of sale process requirement, there would be some decisions made.
You're the processor before us.
If there is a date of termination, like if this body wishes to have the property not continue in perpetuity as a used car lot, and say when this particular business ends, when this use ends, then it would be an interim. So if that is your wish to process it that way, fine. The petitioners have asked for a conditional use permit, and then your discussion can take it where you will.
I guess I'm just looking at finding number 8. And the use of temporary use and has an identifiable date for determination. And I guess I disagree with that because I don't know if one could determine that.
Well,
It's not a date, it is an event. There's a difference between a date and event, but just to be clear.
but the applicant should have the complete understanding when they make the application and go through the process that this could definitely affect the value of their property when they go to turn it over. If the day they quit with their business, it ceases to be a business and it can't be transferred to somebody else. That's a big difference than a conditional.
There's nothing that says it can't be transferred to somebody else. It's when the way that is written is that if it ceases to operate as,
guarantees that it goes with the land into perpetuity. There's no gray area on that.
The interim use would continue as long as it continues as the automobile dealership, regardless of the owner. It follows with the use,
Conditional runs with the property.
correct.
You can't use the property for any other use if we grant them a conditional use permit, can you? Other than,
Sure they can. They can use it for anything that's allowed by law. They can use it for even going back to what it was previously used for, because that was issued as a conditional use. It's just if the car dealership ceased to operate, they couldn't 10 years down the road restart it without coming back and asking for a new permit. But they could still use it for anything else,
Unless we issue a conditional use.
unless it's issued as a conditional.
It seems like from the applicant standpoint,
And that's something for you to discuss. I'm just telling you what the difference is between the conditional and the interim, and that you do in fact have the authority to recommend it as an interim versus a conditional use permit should you choose. Any other questions?
okay, at this time, does the applicant, Jason Jacobson, or a representative, wish to address the planning commission?
Thank you for seeing me. You actually addressed my biggest concern was,
State your name and address first, please.
my name is Jason Jacobson. I currently live in Pullman, Wisconsin, N9391 Highway 53, Lot 47. My biggest concern was originally that it was recommended in the report an interim, and obviously if I'm going to invest in a $50,000 to $70,000 garage, a bar and grill doesn't exactly need that. So I just wanted to have some kind of assurance that this would be something that I could sell, and would I have to sell it as Easy Wheels, and would it have to remain Easy Wheels, or can it just be any dealership, is my next question.
Council?
As long as it's an automobile dealership, it doesn't matter.
Okay. That was my main concern. And then I know some people also had issues with obviously the view, the property values, things like that. And I did make an additional, I did change up where I was originally planning to have the garage by just moving it over in a way that it would block the view from the people that live directly behind it. I don't know if you saw, the houses are elevated. They're about 20 feet roughly above the property. So obviously I can't build a fence high enough. It would look absurd. So if I put a garage, and I have a little form I can pass around, I just figured I'd just move the garage over, and then I would have. Okay, yeah, that's fine. And then I also, I would be willing to do a privacy fence if that would help, just enclose it. I know obviously I don't want it to affect anybody's property values, negatively. I can't imagine it would, going from a bar to a car dealership. And then the only other thing, I guess, was the working hours. It says, I believe in the paperwork, 8 to 6. Those are the normal hours. I do sometimes on the weekdays during the summer work until about 8 o'clock at night, just because it's late out yet. And then also on Saturdays are usually partial days, but I do, during tax time especially, do need to work on Saturdays. But I believe that's about it, though.
Is there any questions from the planning commission members? Pat?
Mr. Jacobson, was there any consideration given to any other proposed business type other than what you're proceeding with here?
Yes, originally I was going to also do it as a potential repair shop, but I was told it was probably best just to do it for now, just have a garage, and then in the future, because I'm not planning on doing repairs now. It was something I just want to do in the future, and just kind of wanted to get it all taken care of at one time. But as of right now, it will just be solely a car dealership, and the garage is just so I can work on my own vehicles. And I was told that's fine, I just can't do repairs for other people. And no, I think other than that, I mean, it's just a used car dealership. It's pretty small. I don't sell a lot of cars, not that much traffic. It's quiet. No big lights, nothing like that. It's not like dull or anything, you know, we're gonna have giant strobe lights blinding everybody. Nothing at all like that.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
So I guess legal asked me to talk to the petitioner about whether you're applying for a conditional use permit or an interim use, because it appears that staff is not all on the same page.
It's definitely conditional.
Conditional use permit? Okay, all right.
Yeah. As I said, I can't invest in a big garage and sell it in the bars.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
The staff report on your page 9 states that the petitioners sought a conditional use permit. See, the staff report was clear that Mr. Mills and Mr. Jacobson were applying for a conditional use permit.
But I also read the staff recommended an interim, right?
There's an end date for the business. The petition itself, as legal said, is called the conditional/interim use petition, and the petitioner has requested a conditional use.
Yeah, well, that,
The planning commission to decide whether there is an end date, or end event, which would be, there's not a used car dealership there any longer. Otherwise, it can be considered as a conditional use, which is what the petitioner would prefer.
so we'll have to change some of these conditions in, like condition 8. After where it says the petitioner petitioners seeking conditional use, the proposed use is temporary use with an identifiable event for termination. And that shouldn't be in there, right?
If you disagree with that finding, you do have the ability to change those findings.
Okay. Right. That's all the question I had for the petitioner.
Lynn?
Mr. Jacobson, are you currently in this line of business? Do you have an existing company? Where is it located? How long have you been
Yes.
doing it?
It's called Easy Wheels. It's down on, if you know where the barn is, in Goodview. It's down there. And I do have a Wisconsin dealership as well. I've been in the business itself for 8 years approximately, but I've only been in the Winona area for about 2 now.
Are you moving your current business or adding a branch or?
It will ultimately be moving, but there is a period of time where I have to transfer things, so it'll be several months before I can fully do that. And that actually addresses another issue is for time, I do want to build a garage, and the privacy fence I don't have a problem with that, but I just want to make sure there would be sufficient time that I don't have to have it up in 3 months or something along those lines, because I wasn't planning on building a garage possibly until next year. So I just want to make sure that time-wise it would be okay.
Thank you.
Vince?
Mr. Jacobson, have you communicated with the neighbors directly, the people that signed the petition?
I spoke to them at the first meeting, and they did have the petition there, by the way, at the first meeting.
At the township meeting?
Yeah, yes. And I did speak to a couple of them. Some of them are here. And they had some questions I tried to ask to the best of my ability. Most of their concerns are pretty reasonable. It's, property value is the main one, of course. And as much as I wish I could guarantee that, I obviously can't. And then I did speak to them, and as well as the board members. They did have, one of the board members wasn't there, so they had to have a second meeting, and that's where they did the vote, and I wasn't present for the second one. So,
And this is going to be an unpaved car lot? Will it be gravel, grass, or what?
it's just gravel, what it has it now, what the existing is now. And I was planning on, in that updated little form I just gave you, it shows like a fenced-in area. I was going to put gravel there, if it's possible, but if it's not, then I have to kind of rethink it, because That's,
And then from the, I can't really, is it a half an acre where the cars would be, a quarter acre, or how big is that?
the entire property is just over an acre, 1.05 acres, and I would say where the actual parking lot, the existing one, is about a fourth of it roughly.
Is what again?
It's about a fourth of it. You can see
Okay.
in.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, do you need that to copy? Okay, pass it back. Mark, go ahead.
Hours of operation, you touched on a little bit. We have that in conditions, and I'd like to hear what you want for hours of operation.
Our primary hours are 8 to 6 Monday through Friday. Saturdays are usually half days and sometimes by appointments, but that does vary though. Of course, Saturdays, most people work Monday through Friday, so we have to be open on some Saturdays, especially during tax season. But normal hours there, and we do work late usually in the summer. Sometimes if a customer, calls and says, we're running late, some people come from 50 miles away. We're not going to leave at 6 o'clock on the dot if somebody's driving 50 miles. And, but usually we're almost never beyond 8 o'clock. And that's usually in the summer, like I said, just because it's still daytime out.
I understand that, but what we're figuring here, this will be your hours of operation. And if you put down that it closes at 6, everyone behind you
Yeah.
will make sure that you're closed at 6. So if you want to be open later than that,
It needs to be amended.
and your Saturday hours as well. Right now, it says Saturday by appointment.
Well, I definitely like that change then to 8 to 8, Monday through Saturday.
8 to 8, Monday to Saturday.
So you'd like the potential to be open 8 to 8, but you probably will have like an 8 to 6 is when you will
Yes.
operate?
And for example, on Wednesdays, that's Tuesdays and Wednesdays are auction days. So we're early there from noon on, roughly. It changes, of course. But that's 8 to 8 is definitely is the main time we'd ever be there. The only time I'm there beyond that, for sales especially, that's sales, doing repairs, things like that, it would be 8 to 8 maximum. And I might do like paperwork, for example, late at night, other than that, it's, I'm not affecting anybody at that point, just doors closed.
What do you intend to do for lighting?
This was also addressed in the first meeting. It's just standard house lights, just security, same thing you'd probably have in your own house, nothing beyond that. I don't have, we do have an existing street light, sort of, that's disconnected, I believe. I might turn that on, but I may not. It's, the township is already familiar with that, it's been there forever.
I guess what I'm thinking of is some car lots have very bright lights, and if that would be shining at the neighborhood.
Completely understandable. I absolutely will not do that. It's the security lights are, like I said, they're just your standard garage, security lights, and they're sensors. So you'd have to actually move in front of them, and that's mainly to assist with a security system that I would have.
Is lighting in the conditions, Eric?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's requirements for dollar care lighting and that illuminate onto adjacent properties.
Okay.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
At this time, I need a motion.
Open the public hearing.
Okay. It's been moved by Pat and seconded by Mark to open the public hearing for docket PC 7-18-19-01. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing for docket 7-18-19-01 is now open. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address into the mic, and as briefly as possible, hopefully in 2 or 3 minutes. say what you have to say, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay. That's the first time I asked it.
You have to excuse me, I'm not much of a public speaker, and I'm a little nervous up here. My name's Chuck Utzler, 43094 Bell Drive, Winona, Minnesota. I live just adjacent to the property down there. I'm also chairman of the board of Richmond Township this season. I'm one of the 3 board members. My personal larger concern at this point, is public safety kind of in the area. We have several children that live right on the corner by the bar there. And we have a lot of roads. All our roads that come from that property go directly up the road behind us, and they're dead-end roads. There's not one road that comes out of the valley. So if somebody's out there in a test driving vehicle, they're going to be turning around in somebody's driveway. Could be mine, could be somebody else. Well, I don't mind that so much, but then we don't know if it's somebody coming around casing the neighborhood to check things out, or if it's somebody buying a car. It's something that normally does not happen in our area. We don't get a lot of traffic, and we appreciate that. The other thing is, as you all know, Highway 61 is a 70 or a 65 mile an hour speed zone down through there. We've had one person killed this year already at that intersection directly out, having unfamiliar people stopping in, taking off, looking at cars, pulling out, creates a danger to the community and the highway. We also think that, it may demand more police protection in the area, just to make sure, because people are going to be calling up going, geez, somebody's been checking out my house, when actually they're probably just a car, someone driving around checking it, but we don't know that, and we have had burglaries in the area in the past because it's such a rural area back up behind. And I'm trying to make this brief. Test driving is a big thing. Police protection, would cost the county some more money, I'm sure. Speed enforcement on our streets, keep them from, oh, gee, let's see what this thing will do for a short burst, It didn't seem like it, but there's probably 45 homes in that area directly behind the existing property up in that back area that this is going to impact. And most of those people in those homes and that direct area are signed on the petition that you guys have a copy of. So there's a lot of concern in the immediate area. Everybody else in the township's over in the next valley. We're a very small township. We have 600 homes, I believe, in the entire township. So I feel most of the people who signed the petition weren't necessarily represented in a context of how they should have been with the volume of people that we have in our township. Let's see. Yeah, we're all for business also. But we would rather see some sort of business move in that would be helpful to the community, and I know that's a tough call because not everybody wants to jump in, but say a daycare or, something of that nature, a restaurant even, something that would help the community. And we live in a very pristine area. It's beautiful out there. I go out and sit on my front porch and love looking at the stars. Well, if I got a car lot less than a block away from me, lit up, my stars are all gone. And that's kind of a whiny thing, but a lot of us feel that way. So I guess that's about all I have to say at the moment. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But yes, ma'am. Sir. Didn't mean to blow up.
No, that's fine. I appreciate the comments that you've shared, because I'm looking at the material before our meeting this evening.
I don't have my hearing aid, it's broken, so and you're kind of breaking.
Break it, okay. I'll try to back away from it here. I appreciate the comments that you've shared. Having been down 61 a zillion times and looking off into that area, some of the comments that you made were well stated and meaningful, especially about the children. And with the number of families that are out there, ballpark, is it a younger area or mixed or?
It's probably 40-60, 40% younger, 60 older. But our neighborhood is so quiet that our children ride their bicycles on the street out there and don't have a problem. They don't necessarily play in the street, but they're always playing right next to it.
Is it an area used for walking for the other residents, since it's kind of a quieter area?
I didn't understand that. Walking. Oh, yes, everybody walks.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Quite a few people walk their dogs up and down the street all the time. I do that, so.
You know, the point too that you made about the traffic fatality, they come ripping down 61, and if you're not familiar with that turnoff, if you're going to be supposedly a customer,
Well,
that's another valid point.
The other bad part about that turnoff is that's actually kind of east and west, not north and south. So in the early mornings, my wife used to go to work down towards La Crosse, and she would pull out on that highway, and you cannot see because the sun's coming up right there. And in the wintertime, you're talking 7:30, 8 o'clock. And every afternoon, it's coming in the other way. So you've got about an hour on both sides where it's very difficult. And there again, the concern is safety, not to put down a car business or anything else, but that's my position. So, anything else? Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. You talk about safety and traffic and everything else, but will a car dealership have more or less patrons than the bar did when it was open?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is about the bar people who would come in there, people who do come in there every day, and they don't drive up and down our streets. I used to own the place, so I mean, they come in, they go home. They don't drive around our neighborhoods, turn around odd driveways, unless they're crocked, and if that's the case, they don't need to be out there anyway. I'm a firm believer in that. And
on a good day, they probably had 6 cars.
yeah, it wasn't the busiest place on earth, so. But I think familiarity of the area is what's important. At least the customers who are coming there for any business are coming there strictly for a reason, not just, oh, well, there's a car there. I think I'll pull in and look at it because I don't know what's going on. Now, oh, I'm going to test drive it. Well, gee, I don't want to jump out on the highway going 65. I'll just drive up and down the street here, get a feel for it. That's my thought.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, for the second time, anyone else wishing to speak to docket 7-18-19-01, please step forward.
My name is Joan Horst. I live at 25961 Miller Valley Road, and I am just at the top of the hill from this. I was hoping that you would read the letters that were sent from other neighbors that couldn't be here, Jenny and Robert Hath, as well as Jan and Don Nettie. But they brought up concerns about just, again, the safety of the area, but also if we're going to be having, say, 30 cars on that gravel area, how are we going to make sure that that oil contamination and gas contamination from the cars, since they're used, a lot of them are possibly going to be in bad shape. But if they leak, how is that going to be prevented from getting into the ground? I know you mentioned that you can have a certain number that close to the river, but there's also a creek behind too that could potentially be impacted if there's any kind of an oil or gas spill. And I know that he mentioned that he's going to keep the lights down, but we already, being along the river, have tons and tons of bugs this time of year, as everybody in Winona does. But with the lights, that will draw them closer, and we'll have even more. So the environmental impact, plus even if the lights are just going on when there's movement, that's still potentially something that's going to affect the neighbors, because one of the wonderful things about living out there is that you go outside at night and the sky is brilliant. But if we have lights that are going on and off all the time, we won't be able to see the stars anymore. I mean, it's one of the beautiful things about living out there, the quiet and the view that you have, not only of the river, but of the sky. I am not familiar with Easy Wheels before this, but I did, like any good Winonan, Google it, and I didn't come up with the one that was mentioned, but there was one in Winona that I just went to look at and took some pictures of, and it's car upon car upon car upon car, and it doesn't look very nice in the neighborhood that it's in. I can't speak to Mr. Jacobson's, but I did take some pictures. Weeds are growing up between the cars, even though this is on pavement, and so I'm concerned about that too. How is that going to look for our township in Winona County if we have stacks on stacks of used cars along the highway? And also, if we have 30 cars packed together, is that going to be an invitation for rodents and other little critters that live out there, because we're rural, like rats or anything else, to take up housing as well? I do have those pictures that I took if you'd like me to pass them around.
Do we not use the 2-minute timer anymore?
What's that?
Don't we usually use a 2-minute timer?
We haven't on situations like this.
Okay. At all?
No.
Okay.
These are yours.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Go ahead. When one gets done, the next one wants to speak. Go ahead, step
Okay.
forward.
My name is Robert Horst. I also live at 25961 Miller Valley Road. I just want to, with the clarification of the conditional use permit versus the intermittent or
Interim.
I don't think there's any way that a conditional use permit can be granted. I mean, when he goes belly up in 6 months, another used car dealer has to move in? With already the distaste for it, let's put it that way, in the neighborhood, now we're going to be stuck with a used car lot forever. On the condition, she said on the conditional use that was forever.
There's already a conditional use for a bar there, right? That's correct. Yeah, so they don't have to go on forever. They just,
Well, unless you change them.
if the owner wants to convey it to the next person as a lot, they can. Otherwise, they can change it.
After it's been a used car lot, who's going to want it? You have to ask yourself that. But at any rate, please don't saddle us with a used car lot because the location of it, personally, I don't see any good, that it's a good spot to locate a used car. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Who's going to, even know it's there? And so I'm really anticipating that he's got about 6 months, year before he's out of business. And then we're stuck with what we got.
Eugene.
Mark?
I got a question for you. Could that be, I mean, would that help out the process if this board would take it up as an interim use? Meaning that if he would go broke and it would close, then it would go back to, does it go back to being a tavern then? Or that's already on there, so it would be, the tavern would still be, the conditional use permit would still be for a tavern, but the interim for the used car lot then would cease to exist?
Well, I guess my only point is, don't saddle us with a car lot forever. I mean, if it goes back to what it was, well, we're already living with that. So, I mean, that doesn't put us in any worse position we're in. Whereas putting it conditional kind of ties people's hands, and it has to be I would assume that it almost has to be marketed as a used car lot. So that means probably it'll be vacant for a long time.
Eric?
Just so I guess the planning commission, you might want to look at page 2 of the staff report. Just wanted to point out that the property is over to development. CD zoning district in the county is a zoning district that has maximum flexibility of different types of uses, including commercial. So that number 4, commercial uses, for that property that's on CD, anybody has a right to come in with a conditional use or an interim use permit for that matter, or anything that's retail trade, commercial recreation, including a bowling alley, offices, hotels, motels, similar commercial uses, restaurants, cafes, supper clubs, on and off sale liquor establishments, wholesale trade, and service stations, auto repair. That is a zoning district that's been deemed adequate for those type of commercial uses.
Did everybody hear that? Understand it? Okay. Okay, for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to 7-18-19-01, please step forward, state your name and address. And if there's anyone else after this gentleman, please step forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Uribe Mardones. I'm living in John Adams Drive, 43056. So it's around the corner. As a new person living in the area, something that we really like, my family and I, is that we live in a quiet and safety kind of environment, because we don't have nothing around that create issues around the neighborhood. Somebody asked if the people walk or run or whatever activity, physical activity. I can say that I ride my bicycle for training. I run around the area. And I feel safety because I don't have the problem with nobody is going to crash, because the people that living over there, you can drive over there and even say hello to everybody, because we, at least, if we don't know like a personal, but at least we know that the people living over there. And Mark, sitting over there, and sorry, I'm a little nervous, sitting over there when the people are talking about here, you make sounds like moving your hands or shaking your head, like you are not agree with the people that we living over there. Probably I understand, probably you don't live in over there, and probably you don't care if the people that we living over there, we are against that have something like this, any kind of business. Not just a car dealer or even a restaurant or whatever it can, because why we don't thinking in put something in order to increase the community, like a baseball field or a court for a basketball or something like that, that make sense with we need to move as a community. A car dealer, how many car dealers are in town? We need another? Why we moving one? what is the reason? And is safety? Is safety for who? So, I'm sorry for saying that, but I really don't like the attitude that you take when the people are talking. I respect you, and I respect all the people that they are sitting here and the people sitting behind me, but I really don't like this attitude. I'm sorry for saying that, but I prefer to say honest and be quiet and don't say nothing about this situation. But talking about the business, is the people that live in over there have a very strong argument about that. And you need to take the decision. And the decision isn't based on papers or permits or many other situations. But if you are going to think and agree and give a permit to put up any business, I don't want to say just a car dealer or whatever, any permit, thinking in the families that are living over there, or thinking if you're living over there, you want something like this over there. Thinking in this part, if you are agree with, if you are happy, or even the place that you live in is beautiful like this, you want something more? You want to change something? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Carol Vertine, and I live at 25942 Miller Valley Road. And I'll make this short and sweet. I run a daycare for over 40-some years, and I've kept my kids safe all this while, and I want to keep them safe longer. Thank you.
I'm kind of nervous one too. Joe Jacobson, current property owner there. My address is 1730 Gilmore Valley Road, Winona. One of the points mentioned that he said about safety for the intersection. I don't care what's in there. Nothing's going to change for that intersection unless somebody else does it. So I think the bar was probably worse with people coming and going than anything else with the intersection. If they think there's a problem with the intersection, it's got nothing to do with, I don't care what, either it's a homeowner or what it would be, the intersection is bad no matter what. I'm making a point too, and again, I'm not going to say anything bad about Chuck, but they all worry about their concerns about the property. Well, Chuck there, he has an airplane that he takes off and lands on the yard right behind it, so I don't think that should be a car lot being a big deal as far as that goes, but it's for sale, it's for any kind of property. When I found out that it was zoned CD1 that had the most lax zoning, I don't care, it's for sale for anything. And if these people want to buy it and use it for community center, want to put, I don't care, I mean, anything's good. But I wanted to say what I had to say, and that's about it, so thank you.
Anyone else? I need a motion.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Vince moved that we close the public hearing on docket 7-18-19-01, and Pat seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay.
Mr. Chair, one of the speakers alluded to the Nibby's letter, and Hess also wrote in, those were at your places.
Right.
I presume all of the plans that you saw those, I just wanted to.
Okay. All, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to close the public hearing for docket 7-18-19-01, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The public hearing is now closed. What's the next step of the planning commission? Do you want discussion? Do you want to go?
I think we have some.
Okay, somebody get it started.
Mr. Chairman, I'll get it started here. I've been up and down 61 for years. I've gone by this property, not close enough to get close to the dwellings back there, but the comments that were shared tonight have some real validity insofar as safety. Just the establishment of the proposed business in an idyllic, I'll look at it that way, setting. That 61 corridor, I think we need to try to make that as viable and appealing as we can. Car lot is not, in my mind, moving toward that. Safety of the children, the property owners. I'm glad one of the gentlemen mentioned how many dwellings are there, and I can appreciate that. That's some big-time investment. And with the daycare, those are all very valid concerns. So I have some real concerns about this. And the note that we got tonight that was in our packet, here it says number 3, 4, and 5. This one from, I think it was from the Middies, yeah. Young children having a car lot in your residential area may have a negative impact on the home values and future home sales. Now, I don't know what properties or acreage might be available for further development, but I think that's a concern as well. And again, located on the Mississippi, I dream about having a residence sometime where I could see the stars at night. I did when I was in Montana decades ago, and it's priceless. So I have some kind of bias on that, but I really don't feel this is an appropriate place for this kind of establishment. I rest.
It's occurred to me,
Go ahead, Vince.
there are 59 people who signed a petition. They took the time to do that, who seem in proximity there. I have pretty strong feelings for them. It's about 60, I think, or something in there. The town board said specifically, we're going to bump this to the county planning bureau. They didn't want to address it, it sounded like to me.
No, it said in there that they support it.
They supported it.
Yep, but
Well, when the county board votes on something 3-2, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
What the supervisor said, and I was struck by this too, was we want Winona zoning to address these concerns of the neighborhood. And having,
that's the phrase I was referring to.
it strikes me.
They could have taken a
when-
position.
I'm talking. It strikes me
So am I.
that it is the
She has the floor.
supervisors. It was the supervisors who should be addressing the concerns of the neighborhood.
I didn't hear him say that she had the floor.
And by all means, interrupt when people are talking.
Is it all right?
Now, let's see. Vince, you made a point.
I think we should be considerate of the approximately 60 people. I may not agree with all of their concerns, but some of them were valid. They're existing property owners there. I understand it is zoned commercial, but there are people that live in close proximity who are have some of their concerns that, at a minimum, are valid, and I think we should address that.
Okay, Steve?
So, yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, but the township, when you speak to the township, they have 3 options. One of them is to take no position, and that's what we get a lot of times, but they check the box of supporting it. So, I mean, I feel like that has weight. I mean, they didn't take the stance of neutral or denying it. They took the stance of supporting it. They're the elected officials of that area.
Council, is it legal to ask the chairman of the town board his opinion now?
I don't know about his opinion, but you could ask about what happened.
Okay, this specific question of Commissioner Jacob, is it,
During the discussion, if you deem it appropriate to readdress someone, you can do that.
okay?
I
but-
don't have any questions for him. I'm
Well,
not asking.
He's got a comment to make to your question.
Yeah, and if I ask him, then
Sir, can you go to the podium?
I just wanted to make a...
Go to the podium.
I'm sorry. Not used to this. Charles Utzler, 43094 Bell Drive, Chairman of the Board, Winona County, or Township, Richmond Township. The only statement I was going to make is on that application, we discussed signing the no opinion part. And I believe on the application, Mr. Teskey had stated, well, there's no place to make a real comment on no opinion. So those two signed the approve, and I signed, well, I signed on the approve line, but I definitely voted no. So anyhow, that's all I was trying to make. So you may want to look at the application and see what it says there to give us because we wanted to make a response along with the no opinion, if that makes any sense, so. Thank you.
Okay, Cherie, do you want to make a comment now at this time?
I looked up some population figures for the township because I was struck by the fact that 59 signatures is a lot in a small township. And I was interested to hear there's 45 households there in the neighborhood. I had friends who used to live there, the Todds, so I've been in that neighborhood. And in the whole township, and this is an old, the last census, there were 278 households. And so anyway, I just think it's pretty significant that there is that number of people who signed this in opposition. And, I guess I feel like I would need to pay attention to that.
Steve?
We approved a car lot on the same road in Dresbach, is that correct? Was that like less than a year ago? So
That isn't directly on 61.
Well, it faces 61. This isn't directly on 61 either then, because it's on Miller Road. My concern would be singling one business out and treating them business different than another application, saying, in the daycare, you can run a business, and the other car dealer, you can have a business, and this is CD. I mean, if you want the luxury of being in a residential area, then you should probably live in a residential area.
Can I?
Counsel?
On that?
Just wait.
Just a reminder that each petition is to be addressed on its own merits, the criteria to be evaluated based on the specific parcel and specific context in which it's located.
Vince?
What Commissioner Jacobs was saying, I remember well the Dresbach one. My feeling about it, though, was he did speak with we had two neighbors come in who were concerned, and he spoke directly with them, and at our meeting, it appeared to be resolved. They were most concerned about light pollution and taking down the old, I think, Union 76 sign or something. But I felt as though the people involved came to a resolution at that meeting. I don't think that car lot ever came to fruition, but.
Lynn?
I've had the distinct pleasure to have a family member live in Miller Valley, just a few houses up the hill past the bar, and I've probably sat outside at a fire hundreds of times in the last 20 years, and there is only one road. There's only one road to all the houses. So unless we can find a way for a used car lot to limit where potential buyers actually test drive the cars to Highway 61, I think this is a big mistake in terms of safety, in terms of the neighborhood's environment, because there's no other road to use. And Dresbach has other options around their car dealer. It's wholly different than Miller Valley. And Miller Valley is really quiet. I think a business there would be good, but not one that has strangers coming in and accelerating and testing brakes and driving cars and into people's driveways to turn around, because you can't even turn around on that road without pulling into someone's approach.
Steve?
So, Commissioner Carlson got there before I did. I'd like to ask the petitioner whether, because that has been the single biggest concern, was if these people are driving around our neighborhood. And Commissioner Reddy, you suggested that things should be worked out within the neighborhood. So I'm wondering whether the applicant would want to add a condition that says we will only allow our test drives to be from Miller Drive to 61 and out, keeping these people out of the neighborhood, which should keep the people safer than a bar that did not have that condition. So I don't know. I'm going to ask the petitioner if that's a possibility or not.
Yes, this was actually brought up originally in the township meeting a little bit. Obviously, I have no problem with that. I always assume people would go on 61 to begin with. It's, as was already pointed out by Chuck, it's a dead-end road, every single one of them, as I've driven down it myself. There's really no reason to go down them. That being said, I mean, short of telling people to only go on 61, and as for enforcing it, I mean, I can't gun to their head, you know what I mean? Like, I can say to go down 61, and I assume pretty much everyone would do that regardless.
So I have recently test drove a car, and the dealer, I was surprised, wouldn't let me go. It was a used car. They wouldn't let me go alone. They said, you're going to go here, you're going to go here, you're going to go here, and they rode with me.
Yeah, realistically, that is how we usually do it. But when you have, you know, if you do have 3 people coming in at the exact same time, it's.
But you would have the authority to tell them to the right is off limits.
Yes, I can tell them, but if they do, I mean, what can I do? Really, at the end of the day, I'm not going to chase them down. But I would I'm even willing to. I mean, I could even put up like a little sign if need be.
Yeah, you're not giving me much confidence that you would. I mean, if you're saying, I think you'd have to be dedicated to it.
Yeah. I mean, I could put up if it would help, I could put up a sign, you know, saying test drives only on 61. Nobody going down Miller Drive. I could put one. Sort of, you know, towards where Miller Drive is, just so if somebody's pulling out, they would see it. Perhaps just a small little sign.
The largest number of concerns I read related to people who are going to use the excuse that they're test driving, but really casing our neighborhood. So, I mean, I don't know that I agree with that's what test drive people are doing.
That's absurd.
But that's what they're claiming.
Sorry, but it's,
right?
yeah, I know, but that's a joke. I mean, you can't, I've driven down that road hundreds of times. Anybody could do that at any time.
And so could anyone from a bar.
Yeah, I mean, that's just absurd. Oh, sorry.
Lynn,
Mr. Jacobson, you put in your application that you anticipate about 4 to 5 customers a day. So if you have 3 people show up that want to test drive 3 different vehicles, couldn't you make 2 wait and make sure that they are accompanied?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, today, for example, we didn't have a single test drive. It's just a kind of a random number, just so people got an idea of what would show up.
I think this is something that is enforceable. I think this would be enforceable, and if it's a matter of whether or not you can have your business on that site, there is ways for you to say you can guarantee that they will not be unaccompanied.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then you also have to take consideration, if I'm going to do that, then, you know, I'm going to have a minimum of 2 people there at all times, because you can't just leave somebody in the office unattended. You know, I've got titles, I've got paperwork, I've got.
Keys?
Yes, but, you know, as we're talking, you know, there's thieves.
Keys to lock the office when you go on a test drive.
Okay, wait in your car, I'll be back in 10. I mean, you can do that, but it's also a good way to lose a lot of business. So
You have more than 10% of the people living there against this, so you should be thinking about how it will work for both parties if you want this to go through.
I'm already talking about putting up a privacy fence. I mean, moving the garage so it would block the view of, car lot. I mean, what more? Like, it's a little absurd, I think, in some regards. I understand, like, some of the concerns for safety are obvious. It's a bar right now. I could buy it and open a bar right now. I mean, are we seriously debating whether or not drunk drivers are better than people test driving? I mean,
That's what the community is debating.
Yeah. So, you know, all I can say is, you know, I'm absolutely willing to maybe put up a sign on the building or, you know, notify people test drives only on 61 excuse me, only on 61. Put up a sign, no casing the joint, if you want. It's, I mean, I can only do what's reasonable.
Mark, can I ask him a question?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're looking for a car, a used car, I mean, you don't always go there. I mean, sometimes you just drive by to see what they have on the lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if you're interested in the vehicle, you just, maybe they'll see your ad in the paper, online, or wherever you do your advertising, and then they'll just kind of wander by, or, I don't know.
Absolutely.
The question I had for you, and hopefully you can answer it, is there dead-end signs or no outlet signs on Miller Road where you first come in?
Actually, I don't think there is. Oh, I wonder. So. Yeah.
There are some, yes, not all of them.
Yeah, because when I drove down it myself, I only drove down once, and I thought it was going to continue, so I assume unless I missed it, I didn't see one. And then I did kind of want to point out one thing too. The dealership currently is in Goodview, and to be perfectly honest with you, part of the reason why I want to leave is because of thieves and frankly unsavory types of people that are walking around. It's I kind of want to get out of town because it removes a lot of that riffraff, to be honest. So, but
Okay, thank you. Council, is there some way that we can put a condition in to this application regarding signage and that on Miller Drive?
You can only enforce things on the petitioner's property with a conditional use or
So he's got plenty of room for signs. It could be a sign on.
Yeah, but if can we at least ask the county highway department or the township if that's a town road, right? Well, that they would.
Valley Drive is a town road. The frontage road is a state highway.
Yeah, but that they put up a dead end road sign right there by this property?
I don't think we'd have a problem with that.
That wouldn't do anything.
Or no outlet, no outlet?
No outlet was legal.
But there's branches off of it. I don't know whether
If there's no way out, there is a dead end sign.
No outlet.
No
Oh my
outlet
gosh,
is
what
what
a
it was.
horse.
Yeah.
It wouldn't change behavior. People would still drive down there and turn in someone's driveway.
I don't think so at this time, anyway.
I just wanted to address the population.
Well,
And then someone asked him a
are
question.
we done discussing? Should we go to the findings of fact, or Mark?
If we can get him to agree, I mean, as I read through everything everyone said, like you said, almost all of them were because of the extra traffic going up and down their streets and the safety and they like the quiet and everything else. And I think that eliminates most of the people's objections. Just by from what I wrote down.
That was the biggest one.
That was the biggest one. I mean, there's some, they say no business and everything else, but the place is for sale. If you don't want a business there, buy it,
Yeah.
make a park out of it. No, that's all I want to say.
Okay. Can we go to the findings of fact then? Okay. What page are we on there?
Two.
Or
18.
Let's see. 18. Oops. All right. All right, I will go start with number 1, and continue until somebody has a comment or opinion. Number one, the use, and this is the findings of fact prepared by staff. The use will not create an excessive burden on existing parks, schools, streets, roads, and other public facilities and utilities which serve or are proposed to serve the area. Do you agree or not?
Agree.
No.
It will not create an excessive burden.
Streets and roads?
No, it won't. I mean, Highway 61, that's in Miller.
I think the excessive burden on streets and roads is what's been the subject of the disagreement with the residents on Miller Valley.
Well, can I speak? Sure.
Yeah.
If the intent is for him to put signage to keep them off from Miller Drive, certainly Highway 61 and the entrance to the bar, I mean, that's what those were built and designed for, was for traffic. And a half a dozen people per day coming to a car lot is not excessive for that, for a 4-lane highway, in my view.
Well,
I've been there plenty of times. I'm familiar with the area.
Well, I personally have no problem with Highway 61, but I don't think that Miller Drive is in any way related to Highway 61, and so I would have to say that it's going to create a burden on Miller Drive, which I realize is only a short portion connected to this property. Mark?
I guess when I was looking at it, I compared it to not today because the bar is closed, but I was thinking of it as an operating, when the bar was operating. I thought the traffic would be possibly less with the car dealership than it was with the bar. That's why I think this is very accurate, as long as they include a short portion of Miller Drive, because not the entire road, but that short portion. That was just my way of thinking, that when the bar was open, the traffic would be the same or less in the future than it was when the bar was open.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Vince?
As I read it, though, aren't they talking about tonnage, et cetera, when they say excessive burden, rather than the type of traffic or something? Because they're talking about other utilities as well. I kind of read it that if they can tolerate passenger vehicles going over it, in this particular one, I think a lot of what we're talking about comes down later in 3, adverse effect on the neighbors.
Okay. So then it's agreeable for number 1? Do you feel we need to vote on it, or?
No, we can address it at 3.
Okay. Number 2, the use will be sufficiently compatible or separated by distance or screening from adjacent land so that existing properties will not be depreciated in value. And there will be no deterrence to development of vacant land. Do you agree with that one?
They're proposing what it's zoned for.
All right. I guess, is everybody in agreement with that? All right. Number 3, the structure and site will have an appearance that will not have an adverse effect upon adjacent residential properties.
It's probably in the eye of the beholder to me. I mean,
I won't argue with that.
I mean, I don't see it as being any worse than a bar.
Lynn?
Is this assuming they will not be test driving on Miller Valley?
Yeah.
Is that what we're
I think-
assuming now?
I think we need to include that in I think there's been a consensus that we want to keep the test driving out of Miller Valley.
Okay, does that satisfy
I
the,
think that what Steve's talking about there, in my mind, takes a big step towards addressing the petition.
all right. Cherie, do you have additional comment?
I would have, for myself, I feel like having a lot with cars on it is different than having a bar, and could impact the neighborhood in terms of values. That's just my own thought.
I
I
would
mean, that's a pretty different thing than just one building there.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'd concur with what Cherie said. I'm in agreement with that. There's a difference between the bar activity and car lot, especially with the hours that were mentioned.
Okay, is there, do you want to have a vote on 3? Or do you want to just, what do you want to do?
We should vote.
Is there any screening going up around it at all?
Well,
It's not discussed at all, I know, but
Jason said that he was going to eventually build a garage to take and shield it from some of the property owners and then build a fence in another location.
I mean, used car lot, what I know of them, there is gonna be some pieces of junk laying around. I mean, you see it on a lot of the old car lots, which, that's just what it is. You know, I guess if I lived up there, you know, I'm not gonna wanna drive by and see, a couple cars that have been sitting around for who knows how long, or parts of cars or whatever. I guess if it's gonna be screened, where you don't have to see it, that's a different story. So I guess my thought we should vote on this.
All right, we shall vote. Mark?
Arlie, that should be something then in the conditions then too, to add that fencing requirement, fencing and/or
I guess if it's
1 year or whatever to put a fence in a garage or something to.
I would like to see if it is approved, I would like to see that part of the condition, that there is some screening around it so they don't have to see, and that's fine. If they want to have an area, it's going to have a garage there, put a fence up, and screening up where they can put some of their older stuff, store, whatever, kind of out of the way, out of eyesight. So, yeah, I would like to see that if it's approved.
So
We still need to vote on 3.
So your support for number 3 is contingent on screening?
Yes.
So we'd need to include.
Council, do we have to do that before we vote on number 3, or can we let that go till we get to the conditions?
It might make sense to do them together, because the purpose of conditions is to meet the needs of the criteria that you're addressing. I will tell you that there is already a condition relating to screening, condition number 9, landscape and the screening and fencing. So if you want to look at that and revise it, if any additional fees are appropriate, but talking about the 2 together might be reasonable.
Arlie, did you hear and understand that? Do you think that we need to doctor up condition number 9, or what's the rest of the commission thoughts?
Well,
Well, that's part of the conditions, I guess.
and in terms of it having adverse effects on the adjacent properties, I think Cherie was calling out that there'd be multiple buildings versus a restaurant bar. It's not just a matter of screening, it's a matter of the facilities on site in addition to the car lot.
Okay, so let's vote on number 3, findings of fact. Those in agreement with 3, that it will not have an adverse effect upon adjacent residential properties, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
I believe the nays are in the majority. That's good enough, right, council?
That's good enough for the finding. We do, however, need to have support for that, so what would you like me to include in the language?
Just put will instead of will not. Just will
Lynn?
instead of will not.
What would you like to put in the language?
I mean, other than striking not from the leading sentence?
We have to revise the basis for it. The basis for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will not, so we have to.
Okay.
have actual-
Well, the first sentence, changing use from a liquor sales establishment to a used cars dealership will change its commercial character by the number of buildings and number of cars placed in the lot.
Anyone have anything to add? Okay, let's go on to number 4.
Are you removing then the rest of that paragraph?
Let's see.
I think you could leave it in. It's still consistent with utilizing existing building signage, screening.
The last part of it.
Oh,
Say that it would
Right.
prevent-
yes, I see that, yeah. Management and maintenance of the property consistent with the conditions of this permit regarding screening and lighting remain in effect. And then striking the balance of that statement.
Could help but not alleviate the adverse effect.
Is that okay with you, Lynn?
Could help or not alleviate,
Could help but not alleviate the adverse effect.
thank you, Stephanie.
All right, let's go to 4. The use is not reasonably related to the overall needs of the county and to the existing land use.
I feel like people drive cars, so, yeah, I feel like it is reasonable. If no one needed cars, then it wouldn't be needed. If no one needed farm products, who would need farmers? I feel like the use is reasonable. For anyone who drives a car and may need a car in the future, I feel like the use is reasonable.
You want to just vote on this?
What's the opinion of the rest of the commission?
I agree with this.
I support it as it stands, as is written.
All right, I see a division. I presume that we should vote on this one. All those in favor of the use is not reasonably related to the overall needs of the county and the existing land use, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
I believe that the motion 4, as stated, has the majority of the votes. We don't have to change that then, right?
Correct.
All right, number 5. The use is consistent with the purpose of the zoning ordinance. Does anyone have any comments on that?
Eric read what the CD zoning district is.
Yeah,
Uses that it
We all agree that this is all right? All right. 6, the use is in conformance with the comprehensive plan of the county. We just went through that. Eric said that it was. Is there any disagreement on that? Okay, 7, the use will not cause traffic hazard or congestion.
I'm not sure I can agree with that,
Well, if they stay off Miller Drive, then it's all right, but,
if they do.
and I don't know what we do about if they do or not. All right, is there anybody that wants to contend number 7? All right,
Well, Stephanie had said something about we need to support the findings need to support what's in the application, and if we're going to have them limit the test driving, should we have a statement here saying that it's
That would be in the condition.
that's in the conditions.
in the conditions, but that doesn't have to be referred to in the findings?
No.
It doesn't have to be, it might not, it'd be the worst idea to do that if that's why you, if that's what would address the concern that needs to be met, to say that a condition limiting the test driving would help alleviate the issue.
I think it would make it more clear. There's only one sentence here, and it just says, will involve some traffic to the site. So I think it would behoove us to state here that there is no test driving on Miller Valley unless they're driving to Highway 61.
I'd support that. Yeah,
Everybody support that addition?
language for that, or?
Okay, I think that that's pretty much universal, so we shouldn't have to vote on that. All right, number 8, the use is a temporary use and has an identifiable date or event of termination.
I think we started with that discussion. I think we determined that conditional use was appropriate, so I would say the red words are,
Can't we just delete the whole thing?
yeah, I believe, yeah.
Can we delete the whole thing?
No, you do have to make a finding on that. You will see that finding on every conditional or
Yeah,
interim use permit.
that's standard.
Findings sheet from.
Standard language.
Should be on both of them. Because of the way that an interim use permit is defined, which is anything that's a conditional use is an interim use if this is met. So you have to determine, is this or is this not met? Is it a temporary use with an identifiable date or event for termination, or is it not? And that determines whether it's a conditional or interim use.
Well, I guess at this time, my opinion is, I think that it is definitely a temporary use. And if the present proposal is terminated, I don't see that we should be giving a conditional use permit to this property so that it can be used as a used car lot forever, because it doesn't strike me that there's going to be a great amount of people that want to take over a business that's being discontinued. Mark?
I guess my hope would be kind of agreeing with you on a little different, I'm thinking that this might be a way of compromising with the people that don't want to have it, that don't want this dealership there. They know that if this dealership goes out of business and folds up in 6 months, then if this was going to happen again, it would have to come through this whole process again, providing they didn't sell it as a dealership. I don't know, hopefully that would help out, by making it temporary, that it's.
Interim.
interim, that would help, I don't know, ease things over with some of the people that are against it.
Anyone else have any comments? Steve?
I understand where you're coming from. How do you see in the event that this business is struggling financially and is forced out of business and is trying to sell the business to somebody else? Are we saying, no, you didn't make it, it shut down? Or does he have an asset that he can resell to somebody else? That's what I don't understand. That's what I'm trying to understand.
But he can resell it to anyone else as a dealership, as long as he does not go out of business first, correct?
That's one way you could do it. The other way, we could modify the event for termination as business has been discontinued for 1 year or more. You could put a limit on it that way as well. So that would have been, if he folded, would have a time period to still sell it as a modification business.
Steve?
So I feel like we need to ask the petitioner back up and see if the petitioner is willing to do this, because if the petitioner is only spending their money on a conditional use permit and they understand the difference between an interim and a conditional use permit, and they don't want an interim use permit, I don't think it's we don't have the right to force it on them. That's my feeling.
Actually, I think we do.
And in fact, I think they could say, I want my money back and leave. So, I feel like if we're gonna convert this from their application as a conditional use permit to an interim, I think that, to me, the next step is to ask them back. Are we in agreement with that or not?
Council, is that a possibility?
You can ask the petitioner, but it's not their choice, it's the county board's decision as to whether it would get issued as a conditional or interim use. If they don't like the fact that it gets issued as an interim use, they don't have to operate the business. But they aren't entitled to a conditional use just because that's what they applied for as opposed to an interim use. That's the way that the ordinance was written.
In other words, you're saying we're just recommending to the county board?
The county board decides whether it's conditional or interim.
Well, do we want to pursue this matter, or do we just want to turn it over to the county board?
I think we need to make a recommendation and we can vote on this.
Okay, it's been suggested that we make a recommendation and we vote on it. Do you have a recommendation?
I think it should be an interim permit with as council suggested, possibly if it is not in business for X amount of time. I mean, there is no identifiable date, so that should be scratched from this.
Correct, it does say particular event. The event would be the termination business.
Right.
So,
Steve?
So I guess I'm still kind of stuck on this. I'm trying to figure out whether the citizenry and democracy, which has power, whether the government runs the people or whether the people run the government. Do they come in and if they make the application for a conditional use permit and have this laid out, that there's two different permits available, and they do not want an interim use permit, can't they say, I want my money back and I'm not going through this?
No. Well, they can choose to not go through.
Then I don't think we're being very clear with them. This is not being fair to them.
It is a conditional / interim use permit application. They apply for it. If the county board determines that that is a temporary use with an identifiable date or event for termination, then our ordinance says it shall be issued as an interim use.
You're taking power from the people. And this is not what I intended when we adopted this ordinance. This was, the petitioner decides if they want an interim or whether they want a conditional. I'm on the board, the county board, I'm not going to tell them what they're going to apply for.
They applied for a conditional / interim use. What the actual permit is up to the county board. They can request whichever one they want, and we made that clear from the beginning when we were dealing with this ordinance modification. They can apply for which they want. It will be discussed, a recommendation would be made to the county board, and the county board determines whether it would be issued as a conditional or an interim use.
They have money on the table.
That's correct.
I don't think they've been given a clear understanding of what that money they put down was for.
Okay, Lynn,
I'm trying to remember how we handled the solar gardens, Stephanie. Those were interim use as well, were they not?
I believe those ended up as conditional uses because of the extensive amount of time that they were going to be in operation. It was the 25-plus years that really led to a determination that they were not going to be considered temporary based on that.
Okay.
I do know that when we were discussing the zoning ordinance modification initially, there was a lot of discussion about businesses being one of the primary focuses for interim use permits, that businesses were of a temporary nature generally. And that's why we included that in the staff report as we did.
Okay, thank you.
Mark,
Steve, I agree with you as far as the interim and conditional use, but I'm trying to find a compromise here. This is a delicate situation where you have a lot of people around here that really don't want this business, which is their right.
Yep.
But there's a parcel for sale, and someone thinks it's a good enough price and wants to do a business there, and that's certainly his right. I understand, and it bothers me more than a little bit, if he's going to be putting up a very expensive, fence and then a shed, a garage, he's going to need some, he better know his own financials when he does that, and if he's already in business, I'm assuming he knows what he's talking about. But I'm looking at this as an interim permit to help alleviate some of the issues that I see out here.
Yeah,
That's the only reason that I'm at all, or else I would agree, but that this is why I think it should be an interim use.
I agree with every word you said, but I don't feel like the government has the power to tell the applicant what they're going to apply for. If they might not be interested in an interim use permit, and if they're not, they have the right to, in my view, have their money back on the application and say, we know what a conditional use permit is, that's what we want. The government doesn't tell me what I make application for. But I feel like our legal is telling us citizens don't have that right.
but
That's
that's
where
what
I'm
we,
stuck.
that's what we, our legal counsel is telling us what was passed.
By citizens.
But they don't have the right to tell a citizen what they're going to apply for.
Well, that's how it was passed. Counsel.
We're not telling citizens what they're applying for. They can apply for a conditional or interim use permit. What is granted is a different story.
Yeah.
They can apply for either. And if I recall correctly, when we revised the application form.
You just said the words, they can apply for either.
It's on one form. It's one application for a conditional or interim use permit. The county board determines what gets granted, if anything. I believe that when the applications were modified, there was information on the applications regarding the difference between a conditional or interim use. So they do know, and I believe it also said, because we spent a lot of time on it, I think it does also say that it could be granted either direction. But maybe I don't have the application in front of me on that.
I would feel much better going ahead with the interim process if the applicant came up here and said, I'm fine with moving forward with an interim, because then we've got agreement on the planning commission, we've got help for the neighborhood. But if that's not what the applicant wants, I feel like it's just government telling the citizens, government running citizens. The reason we can't ask, I can ask anyone anything, anytime. Can I?
Ask counsel, can Commissioner Jacobs ask the applicant?
That's up to you, Mr. Chair.
It's up to me.
Yeah, it's your job.
Pressure's on you, but.
Okay, would the applicant please step forward?
So, you've heard the discussion?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't be here if it was interim. Like, there's no point, I'd never invest $70,000 into a garage, a fence that would then go back to being a bar. Nobody would do that. I don't believe that's when I was filling out the application, I don't actually recall ever mentioning interim at all. In fact, it says right on the top, for conditional use.
Didn't you pay a fee, like
I did
$450?
$450 just for that. And if it's, temporary, I can't turn around and sell it as a dealership, or, then.
I was hoping you were gonna come up here and say, yeah, I'm okay with an interim, and then we could move forward.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately not.
I feel like we're just taking your $450 and robbing you.
I wouldn't be here if.
Can I ask for,
Yes, Vince?
just for clarity, if we crossed out the date on there, the termination, as I understand it, would result from insolvency for a period of time. Is that correct?
Yes.
The event can be whatever you choose it to be. We can structure it so that there's no impact on an ability to sell the business. The business can be sold all it wants to. It's when it ceases to operate as an auto dealership that the use would end. So whether it's owned by this petitioner or five owners down the road, it's if it stops operating as a dealership.
Okay. Can I address something then? Under that, Joe, for example, he's actually been trying to sell his property for about a year and a half, and somebody had mentioned putting it in place so if it was out of business for 1 year, which obviously I'd never want, but if I can't sell it in that time, like if it had been Joe, for example, then he essentially wouldn't be able to sell it as a bar and grill under those same conditions. So if that's, yeah, exactly, but that's what I'm saying is, like, he's been trying to sell for a year and a half. Who's to say that it may not take me that long? I mean, I have no idea. I can't foresee the future. Like, there's no way of me knowing how long it's going to take to sell it if it came to that, which hopefully it wouldn't. I mean, to be honest with you, like, it's, I think total like $1,500 a month to keep the place running. That's like, it's not a problem. I pay that at 3 different places right now, so and I'm going down to 1, so I'm instantly saving money. But yeah, if it was an interim, I would not be here. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Because I need an insurance.
Have any right to ask for his, if we're saying we're not gonna give you a conditional use permit, does he have the right to ask for his money back then? Because we don't have anything available that he wants.
Yeah.
He wants a conditional use permit, and we're saying we're not gonna give you one.
He applied for a conditional use permit. He's gone through the process. You can consider it as you can consider his conditional use permit request, and you can recommend approving or denying that. The county board can approve or deny it. The application fee is for going through the process and having your application considered. He's asking for a conditional use. You're considering his conditional use. The county board will consider his conditional use. If it gets granted as an interim, it's up to him whether he wants to proceed with that, but the filing fee is for the ability to go through the process, and we are giving him that.
Yeah, and I'm not too concerned about the $450, to be fair. It's more the principle of it.
Yeah, I know.
None of us, I wouldn't waste my time
If you knew that you were not eligible for it.
Well, everything else is also on hold, because this has been going on now for, a couple months now with the township meetings and all of that, and all of that was, part of this. So, this is actually like a 2.5 month, 3 month affair.
So
And
far.
I never would have.
The government.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I guess you've answered my question.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, where were we when we got bogged down here? Cherie, did you?
I believe you were considering a vote on number 8.
Okay. Do we have to, all we have to do is have a vote, right?
You have to decide whether you're leaving it as is, if you want to modify.
All right, okay. Does anyone want to make a motion as to what we're going to be voting on number 8?
leave it as it is.
Can I move that we delete the word date? That seems arbitrary.
Cherie, did you move?
I did, but I would accept that
Okay.
and have just an event rather than a date. Is that all right, council?
I'm a little confused. The finding would be that the use is a temporary use and has an identifiable date or event. That's the language that's in our ordinance.
Oh.
That's why it's written that way. There's nothing, no references to a date in the actual finding. It simply references that the event for termination will be the cessation of the business.
Okay, we need a second for this, though.
Okay, So I got,
Steve,
I got
we need a
questions.
second. Does there anyone want
I'll
to second
second.
it? All right, Lynn seconds it. Now, is there any further discussion? Steve?
The word temporary, I mean, we're saying solar gardens or solar arrays that we know are gonna go 25 years. We don't, there's car dealerships that have been there 100 years. We have no idea. I mean, to say that, we don't have any idea whether this is temporary or not. I don't think it's his intent for it to be temporary.
Unless unless the identifiable event of going out of business happens, it just goes on. It doesn't, you're hung up on a word here, and I don't think you need to be.
Well, remember that when we do solar gardens. Because then you'll be hung up on that word.
Sounds kind of threatening, Commissioner Jacob.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this motion on number 8?
I was gone for a while, so you'll have to repeat what the actual statement's been made.
Oh, council, can you do it? Because I'm not taking notes.
It's, right now, what's at issue is whether or not we leave the language and the findings
As is, okay, I thought we were modifying.
Okay, anything else? Okay. We are now going to vote on number 8. The use is a temporary use and has an identifiable date or event for termination. Which would, so, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, let's have a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your left hand. We got a 4-4 tie, right? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I need some clarification. When I left the room, it sounded like the petitioner was no longer interested if it was a conditional or an interim use permit. Now we're discussing it being a conditional?
No, we're discussing whether we recommend to the county board that it be a temp or interim use permit.
But I thought the petitioner said he wouldn't be interested if it was interim.
Well, that's not our problem.
Okay. Got it.
All right,
And
let's,
so what does that mean?
So now it's still up for discussion. You've just rejected leaving it as is, so,
so
so what would you like 8 to be?
Well, it's going to be a stalemate because we'll put something forward that has the opposite tone, and then it'll fail for lack of majority. And so then we'll just keep doing that all night.
we could.
Through the agenda tonight.
I mean, if we add the word not, I'm guessing it's going to be 4-4. Unless someone changes their opinion. So I'll make that motion, and we can go through that process and see if anyone changes their mind. The use is not a temporary use and doesn't, or uses not,
And does not have.
does not have an identifiable date or event for termination. That's motion.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, Pat seconds it. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
I would like to make a suggestion when we vote, at least up in the cities, when it's aye in approval, when you are denying, it's also the same sign. You say aye instead of nay, because the tone of the voice changes the volume. So people either vote aye for yes or aye for no.
Or raise hands.
All right. You don't care if we can just voice vote?
Yes, but the same sign.
All right, all
Not-
right.
Not nay.
All right, are we in agreement we're gonna vote?
Mr. Chair, just so that we're clear, I think at our training, we did say to use nay, because it's clearer for the record and for the recording, because there's delays, so.
It also changes volume.
However, Mr. Chair wants to proceed, but that is what we talked about at training.
Let's just raise our hands, Eugene.
Let's just raise our hands. Okay? All right. Read off how number 8 is supposed to be, council.
The use is not a temporary use and does not have an identifiable date or event for termination.
All those in favor of that, as stated, raise your right hand. We got 4. All those against or opposed to that, raise your right hand.
Motion fails for lack of a majority.
Okay.
To come to some kind of an agreement on this, that someone can change their vote on.
Chairman,
Yeah, Mark.
I guess I kind of made it clear why I think it should be the way it should be. I don't know, I guess I'd be interested in hearing, I mean, I understand, Steve, your position is pretty clear, but is there any other reasons for some of the other participants here? Arlie?
Arlie.
You know, Mark was talking about a CUP or an interim. I would, I don't know if we can, but I would like to see what some of the people would say.
Now, we're really getting into this deep
I'm
now.
just saying, I would like to know how they feel about it.
In the petition, we've already spoken. We don't want it at all.
Well, yeah, that would be simple for our job, if we could.
Sheree.
This would be a question for council. I mean, if we are stuck in this way, can't it just move on with this particular part to not, that we couldn't reach resolution and send it on to the commissioners that way?
Or vote after that on the whole.
You would still need to address your recommendation. You could, we could put in there that this was split. I can try to come up with some language in there that would indicate that this could go either way. But you do need to make a recommendation as to whether to approve or deny. And my concern on this particular finding, leaving it as split, is that then you're opening the door, because we have to note that it would be either a conditional, are you recommending a conditional use permit? Are you recommending an interim use permit? Are you recommending a denial of either permits? And what's your recommendation based on that? And that finding kind of is the distinction between conditional and interim.
I was afraid of that. Thank you.
Mark.
This is also for Stephanie. Can we come back and do this later? Can we go ahead and do the,
You can talk about anything else you want to and come back to this. I would just suggest not moving from this petition before you.
right, that's what I mean, before,
That's a good idea. We might jog,
All right, Vince.
This is zoned commercial, correct?
Yep. Well, CD. Community development.
is being sold by someone who had a restaurant bar to someone who wants to own a car dealership. I'm just wondering, in fairness to the petitioner, if he were to become insolvent, my understanding is he could still sell it as a commercial property. And an insolvent dealership, in my mind, an insolvent used car dealership has minimal value to most people. I'm just wondering if we made it as a temporary permit, I wonder if everyone understands he can still sell the property as a commercial property. I think there was bowling alley or whatever. It doesn't take away the value as a commercial property. It's just that we pulled that interim permit for a used car lot. I'm not saying it's going to go insolvent, but I think it's reasonable. And it's something people could think about.
Okay, so what's the next step, council? Do we go to the conditions or? Or, well, can we vote on the findings of fact and see if we're going to recommend or not recommend without doing anything on this one?
Problem that I see with that is that your recommendation has to include whether you're recommending it. If you're recommending, it has to be either a conditional or interim use permit, and that finding makes the distinction between the two. If the recommendation is for a denial, then it's a little bit different.
Absolutely.
Why is important, but if it's a recommendation, we can specify which one.
We could go through the conditions, right? Why don't we do that and see whether.
All right.
We dredge anything up that, you know.
All right, let's go through the conditions. Anybody have any reason to change or disagree with number one? Well, in the first place, that number one says an interim use permit, so we can't do that either, can we?
If it changes, if you're recommending a denial of it, then I would suggest that it be conditional use throughout, since that's what they applied for. If you're recommending, then it would be, if you're recommending a conditional use, then we would modify that to conditional use, and if you're recommending an interim use, we'd leave it as is. So it would just be based on whatever your recommendation is.
Yeah, but we can't make up our mind what our recommendation is.
Number one just says that they'll follow through with whatever they told you, regardless of what kind of permit it is. So we'll fix the language if it needs to be fixed.
There you go.
Just
Does everybody understand what you just said?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, maybe I do.
I think I might have just thought of a response to Mark's idea of trying to use an interim permit to appease the community. The community has stated they're not happy with that either. So at least the applicant, I mean, at least if we proceed with a conditional use permit, at least we're proceeding with what the applicant is asking, and the community is not happy either way. And we just decide whether or not we approve or deny the conditional use permit.
I'm down with that.
What's that?
I'm down with that. That means we move forward.
All right. So in other words, every time we see interim use permit in these conditions, we're just supposed to disregard that for the time being.
it'll get fixed depending on what your recommendation is.
Just, okay, so anybody got anything, problems with number one? Anybody got any problems with number two? Number three? Number four? Number five? Number six? Number seven? Number eight?
Were the hours changed
Yeah.
from like 8 to 8?
Yes, I would like to see them change to put the hours of operation that the applicant actually wants.
8 to 8 from Monday through Saturday?
6 days?
Hours of operation restricted.
That would be the max. He said there wouldn't be that many, but
The,
that's,
the first sentence, the business will be limited without hours of operation restricted? I don't understand that.
It should be with hours of operation.
Thank you.
we're just checking here, you know. Making sure you're doing your job.
Would that also then remove the last sentence regarding appointments on Saturday?
Yes.
All right, number 9.
So Commissioner Carlson, you had, that you talked about screening, this would be, this seems appropriate, right? It's gonna,
Well, it states a security fence, yeah.
well, and it also states screening. Security doesn't have to be, I mean, that could be chain link.
Yeah. Is that all right, Lynn, or?
Screening the properties, adjacent properties.
Yeah, I'm just looking at where we were before. Oh,
Mr. Chair,
Good for residential properties, Mr. Chair. and planning commission.
It's,
We did talk about signage, about not driving on Miller.
oh, yeah, that was,
So, is that a condition that needs to be added here, or does that go back? There was a signage.
number
I
6,
think we need to add condition 12. I think we have to make a condition first.
5.
okay, well, when we get that far, make it 12. All right,
I think 9 looks right for screening.
all right. Anybody else disagree? 10? $11? All right, Sheree, do you have wording for 12?
Actually, it goes under 3. 3 mentions signs. Number 3 mentions signs.
Well, there is one, number 3 talks about advertising and devices, but we want to add one specifically separately?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That test drives are prohibited on, is it Miller Valley
Miller Valley Road.
Road?
Yeah, and they've got adequate property frontage on Miller Valley Road to put that on, right on the township road. I think that's well stated.
Okay,
Point.
So is, the language I came up with then is the petitioner shall have signage prohibiting test driving of vehicles on Miller Valley Road?
yep. Everybody live with that? Well, our lives are getting much shorter here.
Beyond the,
Right, beyond the dealership or the property.
The sign should be on the property as well, where they get in the cars.
Okay, now,
Anybody?
Now we vote.
Pat calls the question on both the findings of fact and,
there's no question being called yet, that a motion before.
okay,
Thank you.
all right. Do you want to make a motion, Pat?
That we consider the findings of fact and the conditions as stated with modification and have a vote. That's appropriate.
Are you
You gotta
recommending
vote,
approval?
you gotta say either approve or
Oh, okay, okay.
recommend
Okay,
approval or
okay,
denial.
recommend approval of findings of fact and the conditions, in addition to the modifications stated.
And it probably should say, as a conditional use permit?
As, yeah, okay, as a conditional use permit. That covers the base.
Counselor, does that take care of it?
We would need to go back and revise finding 8 if that, because as they are currently
Okay,
revised,
okay.
the finding would not support a conditional use.
So we're back to square one.
No.
Lynn?
Could our legal counsel once again describe whether or not the business continues with a conditional use permit?
The conditional use permit would allow it to operate as an auto dealership whenever and however it wants to going forward.
Not however.
There could be breaks in between, they could take 5, 10 years off. It runs with the land forever. An interim use permit would have a date or an event after which it would not be able to operate as an auto dealership without obtaining another permit.
And so my conclusion for, I don't know if everyone got it or whether I need to reiterate it, was that the petitioner's not interested in an interim, and when we tried to appease the community with an interim, they said they don't want it either way. So my logic was, at least if we move forward with the conditional use permit, at least the petitioner we're at least appeasing the petitioner. It sounds like we're not gonna make the community happy, no matter what. I think we've made great strides in the conditions with eliminating the driving through the community.
Is there a motion on the floor? Could it be repeated, please?
No, we can't have a motion until we get number 8 resolved.
I thought it already says conditional.
No, it's not the way it's,
So we have to revisit that, number 8?
yeah,
As a
we.
motion?
It says conditional use. They seek a conditional
No, this is
use.
not the conditions, this is the findings of fact.
Finds
It's a fact, number 8. It says conditional use permit.
No, it
it's
says
interim.
temporary use.
Temporary, yeah.
Interim.
I don't see that. Oh, so temporary implies interim.
So Counselor, we have to deal with number 8 and get that squared away to modify to conditional before we can move forward?
In order to move forward with the motion that you were making,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay. Well, I move that we change number 8 in findings of fact to conditional use instead of temporary use.
So the finding would be that it is not a temporary use.
Is not, okay, if that's,
Not a temporary.
Is not a temporary use nor has an identifiable date or event for termination.
I'll second the motion.
All right, Steve seconds it. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to make it a conditional use? Raise your right hand. All those in favor or not in favor of making it a conditional use, raise your right hand. It passes as a conditional use. Or we recommend it as a conditional use.
You're not making a recommendation yet at all. You're
Well, okay.
finding 8 to say that it's not temporary and it doesn't have an identifiable.
All right. So now we can have your motion, Pat.
all right, Counselor, can you read that back again? Trying to,
So your motion, if you want to approve it now as a conditional, would be motion to adopt the revised findings and conditions and recommend an approval of a conditional use permit.
Is that agreeable, Pat?
it is. Do we have the, okay, did you mention conditions in there as well?
I did.
Okay, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Steve seconds it. Any further discussion? Okay, all of those in favor of the motion to recommend or to pass the findings and facts and the conditions as stated, raise your right hand. Okay, we got 5. All those opposed, raise your right hand. We got 3. So it is, at this time, we recommend, you state it, council.
Recommending approval of the conditional use.
Okay, is that end the discussion on docket number 1? I hope so. Let's go to docket number 2.
No, you haven't.
God, I can't believe what a long meeting this is gonna be.
We don't go till whenever just to get it done.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I'm gonna leave at midnight. There's just no way I can stay. I'm already sleep deprived and my cognitive functions are failing.
All right, now which, I don't even see my second.
I thought that would be a pretty
Page
good
are we on
compromise.
here?
42.
Temporary use and, make everybody.
And it's
happy.
not numbered, or 41.
40, oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know why.
Never became a.
Okay,
This might not either.
docket number 2, PC 7-18-19-02.
Hopefully we're not gonna have a brawl out in the hall.
Just a second.
Outside there for a second.
Anne's the only one trying to,
Yeah, I'm supposed to get up and leave for the Apostle Islands early tomorrow.
oh, Cherie, what a send-off you're having.
Yeah, my car's out there with 2 kayaks on it.
Did I have that before? I think I did.
But in case you do.
All right, can we gotta get Annie back in here before we can proceed.
Yeah, we gotta make sure it doesn't come to blows, too.
Stephanie, she's got high heels.
Oh, there we go, she'll kick them.
Did you straighten them out, Annie?
Annie, can you get so I can see you? Is there a light that you turned off somewhere?
You can see.
Oh, okay, all right, I understand now. All right.
Yeah, let's go. Let's roll. Petition, let's see, you're Ray. Okay, good night. Thanks for sticking this out. Okay. Petition number 2 is Ray and Ryan Erkey, who are co-petitioners, seek a conditional use permit to allow the construction of a new home on less than 40 acres. And just one correction to some of the materials, I think in 1 or 2 documents it references 6 acres, but actually it's roughly a little over 1 acre. It's 1.1. I think most of the staff report and most of the information is referencing the right acreage. It's 1.1.
1.1 is a split off the larger parcel.
Yep, that's what they're asking for. This is in section 22 of Elba Township. And, maybe this aerial isn't doing justice because it's a relatively longer drive that essentially dissects cropland. It's just enough strip, and I think it's currently an easement out to Sylvan Heights Road, which is an Elba Township road. The acreage is roughly 47 acres. And of the 47 acres, it's predominantly woods. There is the former feedlot in farmstead and building site and pasture land. So essentially there's really no cropland associated with this larger parcel. A little bit closer up, they wish to construct a new house in this manner, and I believe the split would come essentially in this manner. So actually the barn would be included with the new house, and there's also some agricultural and some other outbuildings located to the south.
Eric?
No.
Well, the barn would not, okay.
Goes around the-
Yep, my mistake. I think, yeah, the line comes maybe like this around,
Yep, there you
okay, yep. A couple of main points, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the well is proposed to be shared between the two houses, and the driveway would continue status quo, sharing the driveway. It is a prime soil, it's a type 2E. However, in the ordinance, there is provisions that talk about, even though this is a non-farm parcel, a new parcel, the application materials clearly indicate that this is essentially a farm family connection. The feedlot operator would be the son, a co-operator, and he actually helps with the livestock in the land. So in this case, our ordinance, when we amended it in 2011, we recognized two key points with that the feedlot setback doesn't apply, as well as the prime soil requirement, as long as a new house is established within a 300-foot radius of a footprint of any of the existing farmstead buildings. There'd be a new septic system installed, and we just wanted to note that these have always been kind of tough because we're in a state of flux as far as the ownership. We've been given a certain set of facts at this point that it's a farm and the houses are related and the feedlot is connected to both. But we want to know that if things go south or circumstances change, the wrong set of circumstances, you can have a conflicting land use. Obviously, if one or the other was sold off to an independent party that's not connected to it. So that's just the kind of disclaimer that the department would want to stress. In regards to that, a lot of small feedlot operations are still have been under the radar of the feedlot program, but in this case, since we are looking at it, we've encouraged the Yerkes to actually register the site. They run, I think, typically 12 to 13 cows, so it'd be good, that we have at least, a little bit of manure management plans with them, and just a handle on how many head of livestock that they maintain. We just received this recently. I think this might have been a supplement on top of your books. Licensed septic installer has visited the site. He's done some soil borings, and he's actually now plotted out that there is room based on where the new house would go, that they would have two primary sites for a type 1 septic system. So that goes a long ways in our mind, showing that the site, even though how it's being split with 1 acre, can accommodate what needs to happen on that site. Here's a short video. We're in section 22 of Elba Township, and this is in regards to the Erkey conditional use permit to allow a new building site on less than 40 acres. In this case, the co-applicant, Ryan Erkey, seeks to create a 1.1 acre parcel in order to build a new house. What we're currently looking at is the other co-applicant, Ray Erkey's existing acreage, consisting of approximately 47 acres, which contains some outbuildings and his existing dwelling. The property is served by a driveway that I believe is approximately 300 to 500 feet in length. And it's connected to Township Road, Sylvan Heights Road, which is a Elba Township Road in that direction, I believe. We are currently looking to the west at this point. This would be to the north. And the new house would be positioned in this area. As the staff report points out, there's some comments and information provided about the number of cows. Currently, I don't see any animals on the site, but and I think talking with the applicants, there's approximately 12 or 13 head of beef cattle that they maintain here. You can see that there is pasture land that surrounds the existing barn and area. The type of land that would be taken out for the building site is essentially just some segments of woods and remnant pasture area. No cropland would be taken out of production. And in regards to the prime, it is MAP prime soils, but as the staff report points out, because this is an issue where the new non-farm parcel of 1.1 acres would be maintaining a barn or a small feedlot site with the other co-applicant, that there is a connection with the farm or the feedlot part of it. And also there is a 300-foot exemption for prime soils if it's for a dwelling that's involved with the operation. This would be looking to the south and then looking back to the north again. We did receive a township acknowledgement form from Elba Township in regards to this, and I believe they had indicated support signed by the chair of Elba Township, and the petitioners have also submitted a detailed summary of the request. So that should conclude the video for this application. Any questions on any of the materials?
Question? How much would the animal units have to go up in order to kind of change this whole scenario here? Up to 50 or?
Well, actually, Tanner-Moore requires a 500-foot setback.
But with this scenario with the people being related on their own feedlot, I think
It doesn't apply at this point in time, but if...
If it went up to that, then we'd be looking at.
No, I think if there was a change in ownership of
Change in ownership.
either of the parcels, then it would apply.
Yeah.
So Eric, the septic tank, their septic system's gonna be on other property?
No,
That's,
it'd be self-contained in the new parcel.
okay.
I thought there was a picture with the split showing how it'd be divided. That must be in
It
your...
is, yeah, we got it. I got it.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, does the applicant wish to say anything about the proposal? State your name and address first.
My name is Ray Erke. I live at 19242 Sylvan Heights Road, St. Charles, Minnesota. As far as being more animals out there, the land won't support it. I don't have enough property. 12 is about as high as I ever get. It's usually about 8. So with calves and stuff in the summer, they're sold off in the fall. Other than that, I guess I don't have any.
Clarification, just for a point of information for me, but that's still good to know, though. Thank you.
Yeah, with the cattle are only pastured in about half of the property. So comes the end of August, there's not much left. So I gotta move them.
I have a question. Do you have other employment, or
Yes,
does your son too then, or?
yes.
Okay, would you care to share with us what that is?
Oh, sure. I work for a hydraulic-based company based out of Savage, Minnesota, up by the cities, but I work out of my house.
Okay,
And my son is the principal in St. Charles Elementary School.
okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Thank you.
We need a motion. Mark moves that we open the public hearing for docket number 2.
Second.
Pat seconds it. All those in favor of opening the public hearing for docket 7-18-19-2, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, or aye. And, okay, the public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to make a comment? Kay?
I'm actually, I've been sitting so long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we could all stand.
Unless the two commissioners want to speak, I don't see too many else in the audience here. So for the second time, does anyone want to make a comment to petition, or docket number 2? For the third and final time, does anyone wish to make a comment to docket number 2? Or 7-18-19 docket number 2? Seeing no one,
I move to close.
Sharif moves to close the public hearing.
Second.
Pat seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, aye. The public hearing is now closed. Any discussion? I guess I have a question for council. I don't know. This is stated as a permitted way to get a conditional use permit to build a home on this property, although as a livestock farmer, I have some reservations about saying that 12 beef cows needs 2 people to take care of them. Is that something that is permissible?
I'm not sure I understand what you're questioning.
Well, to get a conditional use permit to build a home on a agricultural property, you have to fall under 3 categories, right? You got to be taking care of a relative, be farm help, or what's the third one?
Or need help yourself.
Or, yeah.
Support the other party or something.
And I guess I didn't hear sufficient evidence, in my opinion, to make that a legitimate way to get a conditional use permit to build a new house.
So that sounds like it would be a reason for voter to recommend denial.
Well, unless you can come up with something that legally makes it different. Eric?
I guess right away, I would start to field your questions on the definition of chapter 4. Farms defines a tract of land which is principally used for agricultural activities such as the production of cash crops, livestock, poultry farming. Such farms may include an agricultural dwelling, accessory building structures necessary for the operation of a farm. The old ordinance from 89 to 2011 defined a farm as 35 acres or more. And we had extensive discussion about farms and agricultural zoning leading up to the 2011 zoning. And the 35 acres they thought was too big in a lot of cases, where they thought 5 acres, 10 acres, if they were doing some type of cash cropping or some specialty, or even woodland for that matter, it met the definition. So here clearly is the case. You have, in this case,
46.
46 acres. So it very clearly in the zoning ordinance meets the definition of a farm to the size. It's not defined by any size, intensities, size or scale.
Concentration.
So even though there's no cropland associated with this, people could actually make a pretty good case about the woodland too. That, I mean, if they're all engaged in the timber production or hardwood stands or fruit trees or vineyards, I guess we changed the zoning ordinance at that point in time to kind of be sensitive to what could be coming in the future. So, yeah, I mean, for a cattleman such as yourself, you can, say 12 to 13 cows, may not pay an electrical bill at the end of the month, but still, it's still a very valid hobby farm that has some value to it.
Well, I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning whether that gives you the ability to have a relative build a new house, calling them farm help.
Well, that's not what they're asking for. In fact, the staff report says we alluded to the fact that we looked at 3 or 4 different scenarios on how they could have made this. In fact, they wouldn't have to do anything. They wouldn't have to split anything. They could have came in over the counter and applied for a permit to put another house on there. But for all, I think, personal preference to own outright at least 1 acre for financing, that was the most feasible. They could have put a modular, if it was a temporary situation, they could have applied for a conditional use permit for that, and for healthcare reasons, but then you'd be looking at probably a condition that terminates one or the other dwelling at some point in the future, and then you'd be talking about interim uses again. So there's a multitude different approaches that you could have took, and as that staff report mentions, is that this is, for their situation, this is the best proposal that they want to do.
Isn't there something, Eric, on there that, I'm sorry, Gene, let me speak. I did. Isn't there something, 40 acres or more?
There used to be. That's not there in the ordinance anymore.
Okay, I forgot about that, yeah.
Well, then I guess my next question is, and it was kind of briefly mentioned, what happens if 1 or 2 of the parcels are sold? Then, because if we grant them a conditional use permit, we just got done arguing over that, that's perpetuatory.
This is a conditional use permit. This is an approval that will be recorded. It will run in perpetuity with the property. The questions came up on conflicting uses for prospective buyers through being offered for sale or realtors. We can revisit the situation. We can revisit the feedlot status and the dwellings that are either or in the close proximation. I mean, we can reserve the right to require a variance 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years, if there's been a change that makes this approval inconsistent with what we've done in the past.
Okay. I'm not quite sure that I totally understand it, but I'll take your word for it.
You don't have to take my word for it.
I'm
not trying to sell you anything.
It's right there. Okay, do we want to go to the findings of fact?
And Just do a universal approval.
Last time we did that, bad things happened. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but if we don't go through every single one, then somebody
All
might not
right,
agree.
number one, anybody got anything?
What page are we on? Help me.
Page 2, page 50.
Got it.
Number two. Number three.
Says it was shared well.
Number four. Number five. Number six. Number seven. Number eight. Number 9. Number 10. Do you agree with that one, or?
I agree. I think where we got in trouble last time, Commissioner Clark, is that we did the opposite of what all the findings and recommendations were. But we didn't change our findings of fact or conditions to match. This time we would be doing, unless someone votes to deny it, if we do the opposite of what the recommendation is, then I think, yeah, quote, bad things are gonna happen.
Number 10. Number 11. That's all of the findings of fact. I hear no disagreement with any of them. Now you go to the conditions. That's on page 52. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, let's take our time on 3.
Condition number 3 speaks to somewhat of the concerns you had too.
Right.
If you approve this as now as a conditional use permit, the recorded deed document is going to have that language on it too. So that kind of has bearing on potential splits, new owners, potential review for the future planning departments too, so.
Okay. 4, 5. Now, do I hear a motion on the findings of facts and the conditions? Mark?
I move we approve the findings of fact and conditions as presented to us.
Arlie seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, aye. The Planning Commission is recommending to the county board that we approve, or we recommend approval of the CUP with the findings of fact and the conditions as stated. All right, next item.
Is there a time sensitivity on this? Would it hurt if we tabled it? Or
I'd take it home and read.
Okay.
Both the township memo and the solar memo and the legal memo on the solar memo should be addressed in the August meeting with respect to the farmers present and their early hours tomorrow, but also the fact that we're between maybe the thunderstorms at the present time for, say, Channel's home.
Okay, so
Until August, if you should so choose.
does somebody want to move to table it? So move. Is there a second? Arlie seconds it?
Just to clarify, is that to table the remainder of the two ordinance amendments, or just the one that we're about to start?
The township and the board?
Yeah.
You want both of them?
Whatever's left.
All right, we want both of them.
Not Functioning.
You understand how it goes from here? Okay. All those in favor of tabling this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, aye.
You want to do it?
What's that?
You said aye, you want to do it, you're opposed?
Arlie, at this point in time, I don't want to do anything.
You realize you do understand you opposed the last. You opposed the motion.
Oh, okay.
For the conditional.
All right. All right, Board of Adjustment, Sheree.
Board of Adjustment met today and considered a petition for a variance to allow a 53-foot front yard setback rather than 65 feet, and that variance was approved. And there was a second variance petition, and the petitioners asked to have that set aside. There were some changes they wanted to consider, the Seidel's, and there's a recreational cabin in Richmond Township. So that was set aside until a future point.
Okay. County Board update.
Our last conditional use permit for Christopher Roth, county board approved that. So.
Okay. Is there anything else? Vince, you made a motion to adjourn, right?
I move we adjourn.
Second. Pat seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.